It's been one of the biggest about faces in the crypto industry, since I've been in it. You can't get a more positive change than what we've seen. And I mean, I think, frankly, President Trump made a lot of promises kind of through the campaign period and leading up to the election. And he's literally fulfilled almost all of those promises.
Beyond the Valley.
Kraken is one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, facilitating trading around the world. But at the time of recording this episode, the markets are in a state of flux around the world, not just crypto markets, but equity markets as well, induced by President Donald Trump's tariffs on countries around the world, even as he touts himself as a pro-crypto president. So what does the future hold? Well, I'm hoping my next guest can help me out with that. I'm super excited to say this is amongst the first launch episodes of Beyond the Valley in video format, so you'll be able to watch those on CNBC.com and YouTube as well. Now, to my guest, Dave Ripley is the co-CEO of Kraken, a cryptocurrency exchange. He's also an industry veteran. Dave, thanks for joining me on Beyond the Valley.
Sure, great to be here.
Dave, how long have you been in the crypto industry?
It's over a decade now.
Wow, so you've seen it all. You've seen it all.
Almost all of it. Never chatted with Satoshi in the forums, but been around for a while.
So we can clear up you're not Satoshi then.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You've been in crypto a long time. What would you say are some of the biggest changes you've seen in your time?
Gosh, I mean, so 2013 I got into crypto. It's a little over a decade ago now. Massive changes. I mean, look, the first conference I went to was about 80 people, right? And I mean, I don't know how many thousands of people are here, but I've been to, crypto conferences with plus 20,000 plus individuals. So massive, change, massive adoption. Obviously, the industry's come so far. Really fantastic. Yeah,
it has been. I mean, you got it in 2030. It's a really interesting time because it wasn't long after we had the Mt. Gox collapse and various other things as well. So let's just talk about what's happening right now as we're recording this. There's two T's dominating global financial markets: Trump and tariffs, and that's obviously hit all sorts of asset classes around the world at this point. What's the view from the crypto industry at the moment about the impact of these tariffs on the industry?
We don't know what all these people are talking about. I think that's volatility down, 5-10%? I mean, crypto, this is like a Tuesday for us. We're no stranger to volatility. Sure, these are kind of big moves relative to traditional finance, but frankly, they're, moves we're pretty used to in financial markets. The other thing I'd point out is look, a lot of what we're seeing now with tariffs and the moves in the financial markets, one, it's a reminder for me of, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, a lot of the fundamentals of it. Look, it's the only truly global financial network that kind of transcends specific governments, that, in a way can connect the world and is connecting the world more so than, we've ever seen before. And so I think that's a meaningful piece about the foundational principles of crypto that, frankly, in times where we see these different things, governments taking different, kind of actions and postures is a great reminder. The other is, Kraken is a financial services company. Look, we're there to provide liquidity. We're there to provide an opportunity for individuals to hedge. We're 24/7, we're always up. We have, some of the best uptime in the industry. And, we've seen in kind of volatile times like this in the traditional financial world, crypto often is an early indicator because it's the only market that's open in, midnight on a Saturday in out there. And so we'll kind of see the moves happen there first. People look to get liquidity from crypto first. And so I think there's a lot of meaningful kind of understories of this that are tied to crypto in some ways.
Interesting. We often talk about crypto in these kind of cycles that happen. The last time we had a so-called crypto winter, a prolonged downturn, there was some interesting things happening. There was a lot of leverage in the system. There were collapses of companies. Do you think the industry is on a more solid footing in this current state of flux that we're in?
Yeah, look, I've been, so as we just talked about, I've been in the industry for a long time, 3 bear markets. You kind of talked about the most recent one. Sure, that one was challenging. We kind of came off all of these various different failures, honestly, that were, FTX, but there was a slew of them before that. That led to this like really challenging regulatory environment in the US, a chaotic one as well. And so I think, right now, if we just kind of like think back where we were a year ago and where we're at today, I mean, I think it's a fantastically better place for crypto. Adoption's up. I think we see more favorable regulatory environment. Of course, a lot of positive moves from the Trump administration vis-a-vis what we saw before. So look, I think this is, I would say crypto has never been as strong as it is right now.
You said adoption's up. That's interesting. What's been the changes in the composition of the market as you've seen them? I often hear a lot from the industry, we're getting more institutional investment happening. Before, crypto was so heavily driven by the retail trade. Is the retail trader still significant? Are they still driving market moves over?
Yeah, so I think two things. I mean, your setup is a great one there as far as like how you framed it. I mean, so one, crypto is originally kind of driven by individuals, right? I mean, this is the first, in a lot of ways, financial services and very much so driven by companies and institutions and so forth in the traditional world, but crypto kind of came on, built for individuals, driven by individuals first. And so we've seen institutions come in over time and more recently than individuals. Individuals are still there, but like kind of the trajectory of institutions looks basically like this. We had like the high frequency trading firms all the way back and call it like 2015, 2016 come in. Then the VC firms in 2017 with the ICOs. Then let's see, what else after that? We kind of saw around the next run in 21, we saw the hedge funds come in. I remember this like Paul Tudor Jones and a number of these folks kind of talking, big hedge fund owners. And there were many others that weren't quite as public that actually came in and took meaningful positions. We of course know this from some of our data and so forth. Now even this most recent cycle in this past start of last year with the ETFs launch, that brought in the RIAs. And so we see now a huge adoption among that population. All of these institutions, or at least the recent two bunches, hedge funds, RIAs, we're talking about like a fraction of a percent of penetration. So while a large number of them have kind of adopted, it's still a fraction of their total assets. So we have much more to run. Not to mention, we've barely scratched the surface with things like pensions and sovereigns and so forth, even though we're hearing some rumblings there now as well.
How do you think those kind of investors get involved here? Is it a change of regulation? And we'll talk a bit more about regulation, or is it just almost a sense of being a bit more comfortable with what these assets are?
Yeah, I think it's both, but I think that we shouldn't discount or kid ourselves on the regulation piece. It's important. It absolutely is. I mean, I've talked directly with many of these different institutions, and it is a meaningful part of their business. Many of them are regulated financial institutions themselves. They manage other individuals' money that brings them into the regulatory fold, and so it's like really meaningful. So I think that change in the US, frankly, it's probably the biggest collection of financial institutions sits in the US, certainly of the larger ones. That change of the US regulatory environment has really started to get a lot of conversations moving among financial institutions. And so now we have sovereigns, yes, including the US with a strategic Bitcoin crypto reserve as a sovereign. I think we see, endowments have actually been in, university endowments been in for a while. We're starting to see more of talk among that group. I already mentioned a few other groups. So yeah, look, I think there's a lot of institutional adoption that's happening now. And it's one place at Kraken that we're leaning into. We have one of the most complete portfolios of products for institutions. And, we're looking to, really, bring that next group of, entities into the fold in crypto.
I've been covering crypto since about 2015, and back then we used to talk about these Bitcoin whales, these large holders of Bitcoin with the ability to move markets substantially. Is that still significant or relevant to the markets as we talk about price movements and holders of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it's given there's more transparency in I'm not sure exactly where this comes from. There's whales in traditional finance, right? Or big holders of assets in traditional finance, just the same. But maybe given that there's a little bit more transparency in crypto, you can kind of see the Bitcoin move on to an exchange. I always see these posts on Twitter, whale moves 150 million onto Kraken or, whatever it is. Some of these things are just run of the mill that happen. But I think it's frankly a bit more of just the transparency that you see. Some of the movements are more public on chain because look, the fact that there are kind of big asset holders, big traders, big volume movers, that's no different TradFi and versus crypto.
Yeah. Can we talk about what's happening in the US at the moment in terms of the administration and also the regulatory front as well? Just starting with the administration, of course, President Trump campaigned on a very pro-crypto message and on the promise of an environment friendly to the industry as well, which is very different perhaps to his predecessor as well. Given sort of what's happened in the business world with tariffs, is the industry still feeling supported by the current administration? I know it's only 3 months in, but is the industry still feeling supported by that?
Yeah, I would say this is probably, it's been one of the biggest about faces in the crypto industry, since I've been in it. Frankly, I don't know, in areas of government or you name it. You can't get a more positive change than what we've seen. And I think frankly, President Trump made a lot of promises kind of through the campaign period and leading up to the election. And he's literally fulfilled almost all of those promises already. And I have no doubt that every last one of the things that we talked about with him directly as part of our engagement with, all of folks in governments, in the US, here, everywhere else, it's just been super positive. So we're really, frankly, appreciative, and this is what we've always thought, that there should be an embrace of crypto, and we're seeing it now, which is great.
Yeah, you've been speaking to the president. What are some of those conversations you're having? I know you can't necessarily go into specific things that were said, but what was the gist of the conversations you were having and continue to have with the current administration?
Look, I think, a discussion on the fundamentals and the principles of cryptocurrency, which is technology innovation, bringing all those benefits to individuals and businesses, taking a more open approach to innovation as opposed to stifling innovation. This has been a history of the United States. Obviously, a lot of innovation that's happened in that country for sure. And, just kind of these basic fundamental principles are really the undertones of those conversations. And they kind of lead to this outcome of hey, let's take a positive approach on crypto, which, it's kind of amazing that, you see government leaders somehow arrive at a different conclusion. It's, almost lunacy. But it's really refreshing to see that, positive view come out, and it's been great for the industry. And
since he's taken office, have those conversations changed now to perhaps more specifics? And as we talk about regulation currently in the US, we know there's a number of bills making their way through the legislative process on stablecoins and market structure and various other aspects as well. So yeah, just what are the conversations at the moment, and is the time spent now more on Capitol Hill talking to lawmakers? And
yeah, no, you hit a great point there, because that's those are a couple of real concrete pieces that we need to happen in the industry. There's stablecoin bill. There's what's called a market structure bill. It's basically the bill that regulates Kraken as an exchange.
The market structure bill specifically.
Yeah. It's effectively a bill to regulate exchanges, more or less, custodians and so forth. And look, those two bills have been in progress through Congress for quite some time. A lot of people in Congress, in the U.S. Congress, doing a great job of putting those bills together. A lot of people, Congressman Hill, McHenry as well, working with him, Senator Haggerty, Senator Lummis, a number of great individuals doing great work, battling, a problematic administration that, couldn't figure out how to move anything previously. Now they're going to get done. In this, now that we have a new executive branch, new administration, now they're going to get done, which is a fantastic thing. So you hit the nail on the head with a real concrete piece that's important for the industry.
Those particular legislative pieces as well. I understand also the market structure bill is also about sort of identifying what the Commodities Futures Trading Commission regulates in the SEC, and that's been a big sticking point, right, in the US at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. It helps, codify, okay, how are we actually going to regulate an exchange like Kraken? Which agencies, which assets will fall where, and so forth. So.
Do you think that, and as we spoke about the institutional piece, do you think those kind of legislations then allows institutions, and not only institutions, I mean, even if we talk about corporates at this point, if there's more regulatory clarity on stable coins, there is a view actually, why wouldn't corporates be buying stablecoin even in terms of treasury, in terms of cross-border transactions, these kind of things? Are you of that view too, or is that quite a too bullish a view?
That's 100% what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we already see this, adoption of, stable coins, in across the world. A lot of different use cases for them. B2B payments, which I think you hit on, is one of the use cases for stablecoins. There's a few. I mean, there's people that hold stablecoins, different parts of the world that want to hold US dollars, frankly, that, want that exposure USD as opposed to their local currency. It's kind of a settlement currency across centralized exchanges and DeFi. And then B2B payments is the other thing that we see in our customers that actually have adopted using stablecoins. Some of them actually take those stablecoins and then use them for B2B payments. I think that particular one with the regulation piece is going to grow. So you hit the nail on the head.
I was speaking to Charles Hoskinson of Cardano, and he was of the view that Mag 7 would be adopting stable coins.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, it's a good one. Perhaps. I think. Who was it? Elon said, is it Tesla or was it SpaceX using to pay some of their suppliers and different service providers in different geos? So yeah, maybe some of those large tech companies will get in there.
Right, and just on the current Bitcoin strategic reserve, which was obviously a fascinating move. Can you lay out how significant you think it is? I know there was a bit of underwhelm from markets. Perhaps there was a bit of hype leading up to the whole presidency, of course, and there always is. But how significant do you think the reserve is, given the U.S. government isn't buying any new crypto at this point? Yeah. At this point, yeah. I mean, I think I'm not even certain where the latest is, because I always hear like different news pieces on this. But like, yeah, for sure, there's the hodling of the existing crypto that the U.S. government has. I mean, I think what are the Bitcoin sales that the U.S. government has executed on so far has cost them, what, 5 billion, 20 billion, some like really big number. I'm not sure exactly what it is, in lost gains. So that's going to end. That'll be part of the strategic reserve. Look, I think it's a potential they'll add to it. I guess maybe that's not really locked in just yet, is what you're referring to, perhaps. But look, I mean, when you have the largest, economy starting to move in and, establish a strategic reserve, I mean, how much longer before other countries start doing the same? Yeah. So I think it's pretty interesting. I think the executive order we're talking about, well, we can buy, there just has to be budget neutral ways to do so. I'm not sure what that necessarily looks like, but do you have a view of how that might happen?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for reminding me. Budget neutral ways. Yeah, look, I presumably there's potentially some ways to pull that off. I'm not sure exactly how that happens, but yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion as well, Dave, about Bitcoin specifically, and as continued innovation happens in the blockchain space, Bitcoin's role in the future has been either questioned or kind of reinforced by others. What's your view on Bitcoin specifically, given it's the biggest kind of digital coin at the moment?
Yeah, you mean like Bitcoin versus other cryptos?
Bitcoin versus other cryptos. Yeah. What role do you think it has, if any?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think Bitcoin is like the one, the foundation. It is the most proven. Over time, I think we like to use this term anti-fragile in the crypto industry. I mean, Bitcoin in some ways moves slower, but that's a feature, not a bug when it comes to Bitcoin. It helps ensure the security of the network in many ways. And so I think look, this is foundational. It's the bedrock it's the reserve of the crypto economy. And I think Bitcoin is, proven out over time. And I think it's only gotten stronger, methodically so. While we're going to see a lot of other innovation happen on other networks. And that's, I think, appropriate. Because, I mean, naturally, this is open innovation in crypto, right? So we're going to see a huge amount of innovation. Maybe that happens on network. Maybe some of the most successful parts of that innovation kind of make their way into the Bitcoin network over time. And so I think it does serve a fantastic role as that bedrock of the crypto economy.
Well, you mentioned innovation. What do you think are going to be some of the key innovations happening over the next few years? When we speak of stablecoins, are of course one of those. But I've heard a lot about real world asset tokenization as a key example. Where do you think the next big kind of breakthroughs are going to be?
Well, I give you maybe a few things. One, so we're like at Kraken, we're like super deep in trading investing. This whole DeFi world, I mean, that's like really meaningful, right? I mean, we went from 0% of all crypto exchange transactions happening on DeFi, before the DeFi summer. Then that happened, it came into being. Now over the past, year, some months we've seen as high as 15 to 20% of the total. Happened on decentralized exchanges. It was really meaningful, and the adoption of DeFi has gone really quick. This is also where real world assets come into play, where we might see trading of equities on DeFi networks, decentralized exchanges, kind of convergence of the two in a lot of different directions. TradFi and crypto come together. That is one right there. We already see stablecoins are effectively a real world asset, tokenized real world asset. We're seeing some now like treasuries and interest-bearing assets in various different forms on networks. I think that's definitely going to happen. And then my kind of one that aspirational I really like is I love DePIN. So kind of all the like physical infrastructure, Filecoin I'm a fan of, even though it hasn't really seen the adoption yet of decentralized storage. And there's a number, decentralized compute, a number of these others that I think are interesting, and I'm rooting for those.
Yeah, there'll be some listeners who might not be aware of some of these. This is the idea that you and I could almost rent out our compute, right? For example, or rent out what storage we have, on one of these networks.
Yeah, or your wireless capacity that's not being used and so forth, and kind of have that full mesh network and return the internet to like a truly decentralized.
I know decentralization is almost like a whole nother topic, but I do want to just pull up as well. There's a lot of questions around how you regulate decentralized exchanges when it comes to some of the regulations you may have to kind of work with, anti-money laundering, your customer, these kind of regulations as well. Is that, and how then regulators should approach some of that so they could go mainstream. Are there answers to that yet? Discussions happening, or is it too early yet?
Discussions happening for sure. I mean, I guess a couple of different things. Kraken, we're actually like meaningful defenders of, we look to advocate for regulation where it makes sense. So a centralized exchange like Kraken, sure, we get it. We hold our customers' funds, let's evolve regulations that are fit for purpose for our business. But when we come to like a decentralized product or a non-custodial product or service or piece of technology where there isn't the same type of centralized institution that's taking control of others' assets, also these networks are much more transparent as well. Everything's out there on the blockchain. I think it's a very different dynamic when we talk about regulation. I mean, in a lot of ways, these networks, Bitcoin itself, Ethereum itself, are self-regulated. That's kind of like how they've arisen to be. And so I think we need to be really thoughtful of where we apply regulation versus not in the crypto space.
Dave, let's talk a bit about Kraken then, your business. You came in as co-CEO at an interesting time. I think the company had made a round of layoffs. The previous CEO was departing and there were questions over cultural issues, etc. Where is Kraken now? What have you changed and what's happened?
Maybe not all of that's entirely correct. Like Jesse was co-founder, CEO of Kraken for a decade. One of the greatest entrepreneurs in all of crypto. Founded Kraken, built it to an incredible company. I stepped in after he decided like, hey, it's been a decade of leading this company. Of course, I've been there not quite as long as him. And, took over since then. Now co-CEO with Arjun, we team up on everything and it's been fantastic. What is Kraken up to though, is your question. Look, I think a number of different things. We started right here in Europe over a decade ago. We started as an exchange, first place you can buy and sell Bitcoin with euros. We've since expanded meaningfully. We support now 300 plus cryptocurrencies, many other products, derivatives, margin trading, consumer trading, staking, other ways to earn interest, an institutional offering, custody, prime execution, all these various different pieces. So where do we go from here? Well, one is geo expansion. We, from the time we launched in Europe, we since over the past 5+ years launched in US, Canada, UK, Australia. We're now looking into Latin America, Middle East, some areas Asia Pacific. And then the other is products. And so I mentioned we're really deep in trading, investing. We're actually, and we kind of sit in between TradFi and crypto. We're actually looking to lean into that convergence. Now are moving into some of the traditional financial assets. We just acquired this company, NinjaTrader, for $1.5 billion. That's a big move for us, fantastic company. We're gonna look to further integrate their products for our customers and vice versa. So one is kind of leaning into more asset classes. Two, payments. And so we think about bringing more to our customers, their entire financial journey, not just trading, investing, wealth building, but their kind of personal finance and payments as well. And then the third, probably most interesting, is what we call on-chain, which is the world of DeFi. We just launched a layer 2, non-custodial wallets. We have a wallet out there, and so I think there's a lot of exciting things that are going to happen in that space that we're going to be a part of.
So currently, growth being driven from these new products, from geo expansion. You mentioned the big acquisition as well. How much is M&A featuring in what you're doing going forward? We had a big announcement from Ripple, I think, not long ago about an acquisition as well. So there seems to be action happening in the space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, our acquisition is interesting. It's the biggest acquisition in crypto, and it happens to be a crypto company buying a TradFi company, biggest in crypto history, and it goes in that direction, not the other, which is, I think, pretty interesting. And kind of, it's an indicator of where we're at as an industry. For us, M&A is an important tool. We've used it sometimes in bigger ways and in smaller ways. It's usually a tool to fulfill our roadmap. We have a strategy and a vision of where we're going, products and geographies, different customer segments, and it's a path usually to get to some of that roadmap faster. And that's how we've used it in the past and how we'll likely continue to use it in the future.
Fascinating. And what's the prospects at this point for an IPO, Dave? You probably get asked this all the time. I'm sure you're bored of it.
This is the favorite one.
What's your prospect for an IPO given? I mean, and I think the question now is a bit more relevant because I think the changing regulatory environment in the US may make that path easier
for sure.
if there's need for it.
In the previous regime with the SEC where it was a challenge. But it's of course not a surprising question. Kraken, we just announced released our financials publicly. I don't know, what was it, 2 months ago? And for 2024, we did 1.5 billion total revenue, profitable. We've been profitable for many years. So driving strong profitability, strong balance sheet, great adoption and growth among customers, key metrics. So it's not a surprising question. We do view going public as a milestone on the journey. Look, the journey is to achieve the mission, grow crypto adoption, achieve financial freedom. That's our long off mission we're focused on. We're building a full financial services platform on the way. Going public is a milestone that will help in achieving some of those things. And so I think it's out there for us. We're not sharing a specific timeline though.
Yeah, it's on the mind though. It's on the mind, always on the mind. Great, Dave. Thanks so much for joining me. It's a pleasure meeting you and speaking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Arjun.
And thank you all for listening and watching. That's it for another episode of Beyond the Valley. Remember, you can subscribe, follow, and also drop us a comment if you're watching as well. That's it for this edition. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.
Beyond the Valley.